My name is Jonathan and welcome to Software Design from the Beginning. There are previous parts to this video and there is a kind of sequential flow to it, so I highly recommend going back and watching them in order. Let's get started. This is where we ended off in the previous video. What we're going to do is look at the checklist. The first thing to identify in any design really is the core primary structure. By that I mean, what is the central concept of it all? If I was doing a booking system for a camping site, what do you think that might be? If I was doing a logistics application and there's long-haul trucks delivering all kinds of goods across the country, what might it be? And so if you can understand the industry, understand the application, understand the core domain language for the core area, this is where you start. This is the place where it must all center on. It sounds easy enough, but you'll be surprised to hear perhaps how complicated some applications are and how the core seems to be split into 2 or 3 parts or more. The core can be split because of our technical requirements or how we think about the domain. For example, we might have an API that's based on a very CRUD-like feel, and we might have a domain object called trucks, right, or transport or deliveries or something like that, and there's a whole list of these things and the API, and we can call them, and the logic and the feel might be on this side of the fence, and we have to code and call the right thing in an order. Perhaps you're not surprised to hear that that is a very common thing, and in that way we're taking the complexity away from ourselves, right, the encapsulation, and we're giving it to the customer or whoever's calling the API. But also what we're doing is confusing the core. Which API or which part of the API represents the core of the system? So it's very, very important. APIs who get this right tend to be very easy APIs. When you understand that the core concept, the concept that you think should be the core, you go and have a look and there it is the core. And that sort of understanding, that closeness that you have in terms of your mind thinking that something should exist and then it does, that's a good feel for a design. When you look at a design and you see nothing of the things that you were thinking, so you're looking at a bonsai farm and you understand, okay, there must be trees, and you have a look and you're looking through the API and you see stock, you see material, you see species, and you don't see the word tree. Well, okay, maybe it's not too hard. We can see species and material. Maybe material is species. Oh, there's a connection there. Maybe you'll forge ahead. But it's not as intuitive as seeing something called tree, right? Because tree is obviously what bonsai is all about, and everything can stem off the tree. So if you are generalizing and abstracting a design, you've got to be very careful not to abstract it away too far so that the core is obscured. In my opinion, systems where the core is so obscured makes for very complicated systems. So let's have a look at what that could be. Let's pick the bonsai farm. And what I'm going to do is say that there is a tree. And the tree, let's get rid of all of this actually. Let's get rid of all of this. No complications here. Nothing in our way. So we're just going to draw something here and we're going to say that this is a tree. If I was thinking, so I'm going to put a header up here and just say that that's a bonsai farm. Okay, so if I was thinking of building an application for, let's duplicate this. If I was building an application for the kennel, right, a kennels, there you go, then what would be the central part of a kennel? Is it the animal? Is it the lodging? do I think that it is the seats available, right, or the beds available, right? So the kennel operates very much on beds, right, or enclosures, areas. So if the kennel has 10 beds, I can keep 10 animals. So one could say, well, that's the core, and the animal, right, sits inside of that bed, right? That's what we could say. On the other hand, we could say, well, no, that's a different way of thinking about it. What we do is we book the animal in, and the animal is assigned to a bed, right? How you choose the core, the primary structure, is everything, right? The choice that you make here and what kind of level of abstraction and generalization you place on that core could end up in entirely different systems. It's very important to get that core. Let's think of another one. We're going to book something on a camping holiday. So what is it? So let's call this a camping holiday application, and we need to do bookings. Is it bookings? Am I saying that? Am I leading you? Am I saying that bookings is the most important thing and then campsites are the secondary thing? Which way around is it? Do we have campsites as the primary thing and booking, right? We campsite and then we do a booking for that campsite, right? Which way would you do that, right? So I'm not going to give you any answer because in fact there probably isn't an answer. But it is important, and it's so important for the rest of your design. As I throw things into the system, as I throw more and more things into the system, and I'm creating relationships between these other things, then it's going to matter more and more. In fact, if I have relationships between everything, and you're thinking from a technical standpoint, I would like to decouple, you might say, well, okay, booking, but actually there is a thing called days, and this thing is going to be related to a booking, but I'm going to decouple it because I've got this other concept called, let's think of something. We've got weeks, right? Days and weeks, there you go, and that's some kind of time frame. So in this case, I can slot in a day kind of booking or a week kind of booking, and I want this entirely decoupled. I don't want a line there, in other words. I would like something abstracted. So I can put something in here and say that there's some kind of duration type. Okay, and that duration type, well, here we have a generalization of these two things, and I'm going to rely on that. And I'm not going to discuss now whether it's an API interface or whatever that might be. Let's just say we've got something like this. Is this the right way to do it? Is this the worst way to do it? Is this generalization wrong? Is it overkill? Should I just not have perhaps a label on here with what the duration actually is? This form of design, the decisions that we make in terms of the core structure and the relationships that drive from that core structure, that makes an entirely different application. Let's do it. Let's create another application. Camping holiday, there it is. And we're going to say, well, what we're going to do is base everything on a booking. And the booking is for people, right? So we're going to have, you have a booking process, and the booking is for seats. And then we're going to say the site, and that's how we do it. Now the site, well, there's different types of sites. So we're going to abstract this away and say, okay, well, that is a site, camping site. There you go. And later on, we're going to embed something at this level here, which is derived from the abstraction over there. So in fact, site is the abstraction, actually. So the site is the abstraction, but there you go, camping. Let me do that again. We've got camping, which is the abstraction of a site, and then perhaps we have I don't know, I don't know this domain, to be honest. I don't do a lot of camping, so I'm struggling for words, but there you go. Let's call this something else. We'll call this field or caravan kind of thing. So here we have a booking, and you book seats for a site, and then there's camping. Look at how different this architecture, or how different this design looks, and what kind of complications you might come into play in doing the system in these two different ways. Now you could probably think of a third one. If I pressed you, you could probably think of a fourth one. You might be creating arbitrary differences and just doing it for the exercise, but you must remember that different people have different ways of thinking and reasoning about these things. And in an environment where the domain expert perhaps, or the owner of the business who wants the app, they're going to come at you from a certain angle. They're going to be saying it's all about the bookings, it's all about the bookings. Their language will be bookings. Well, here's an Excel spreadsheet where I currently keep my bookings. My booking information is stored like this. And this could drive you down a line of creating bookings as the primary core structure. Is that correct for the longevity or the long-term additions or the kinds of things you're going to add to this app in the future? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. That is a decision that you have to be very, very careful with. So the core primary structure is incredibly important. Moving on to requirements. Now, we kind of alluded to this in a way. It kind of relates to the core structure in the sense that the requirements might force you down a certain way of thinking, like I've just mentioned. But requirements are also things like, can I export this data? Can I search for something? Can I double book? Can I, and so on. And the requirements are going to lead you to more and more rules, or I should say perhaps flow. So the seating, there might be flow. Let me draw it another way and say that there could be business rules, perhaps, attached between this relationship. And business rules really could exist at any point, and your requirements really boil down into this kind of language. The requirements are very, very important, but are they as important as designing the correct kind of model? I would argue it's not. I would say that the requirements is actually a stumbling block or misdirection. Often when people think about design in this current agile kind of methodology world, we're thinking, where's the requirements? Get the requirements, follow the requirements. The problem with this approach is you might not be building the correct model in the correct way for that current set of requirements. The requirements might be turned on its head come the following year. What you really have to think about is the domain. And there are types of design that focus on that, DDD for example. And the domain is such an important part of it. We should not neglect its role in the requirements, or we should not let requirements supersede or influence the domain model that we should be designing. That does not mean that we design the entire domain model or design everything up front, but what it does mean is we design the correct primary core that even might go against requirements or feel that it goes against requirements because you're introducing a boundary or a concept or some cohesive object or some kind of relationship that is not within the requirements, but it is necessary for the model to be a long-term solution. And this is a very important part of design, and I feel like it's a neglected part, one that leads to further complexities, refactorings, reworkings, and so on. The next part is architecture. And really what we've got to consider there, we're going to do this very briefly. This is really another topic for a whole nother video. Just to briefly introduce it, the architecture of your design is important not just because of traditional things and thoughts, we need an API and an MVC and separate and decouple and those kind of things, but the architecture geared towards the business domain. So if we're going to be following some kind of booking system for this camping site, and the booking system is an internal proprietary locked-in system, or if it is a microservice, right? Are we providing services from a business capability standpoint, not a technical, but a business standpoint? Are we providing the search to other systems? Can people call, in other words, call the bookings from their website and call us and have their own UI? Those kind of requirements, that kind of architecture should be dictated and driven by business capability. It is not good enough for you to say microservices is the in thing. We must develop in microservices. And when people say, you might hear a lot of this, you might say, oh, don't do microservices, it's absolutely terrible. You might say, microservices is the answer for everything. The truth is, it's the answer for many things, the things that matter to you, if they matter to you. That is, the crux of the matter. Do you require this architecture for this domain model, and how you build that system, how you build that core infrastructure, the core architecture, the core domain is it's the crux of all the design work that you're going to be doing, and it's really the bane of your problems if you get it wrong. In the next part, we'll be going through checklists again, but we'll go through it from another layer of abstraction. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell. I'm Jonathan. Thank you for watching.